In an era of mid-century Melbourne occupied by majestic coffee houses and picture palaces, a young film projectionist named Peter Yanudes made his way to the city among a large diaspora of post-war migrants from Greece. As the demographics of the city changed, so did its appetite for a cultural shift they could see their own backgrounds in. Through this, Peter enmeshed himself as a pivotal figure in the local Greek community by importing Greek language films to Australia and organising regular screenings. This wasn't just run-of-the-mill entertainment. These screenings fostered a much-needed space for new immigrants to connect to their language, history and culture. While Peter owned up to a dozen cinemas at one point, he owned the Westgarth here in Northcote for nearly 40 years. In fact, it was where he maintained a small office with a museum's worth of archival material relating to Greek cinema. The cinema is now over 100 years old, and not only retains many of its original features, but still screens an eclectic lineup of international films that Peter started decades ago. In today's episode of Short Circuit, the history of the moving image here in Melbourne is well represented by the highly innovative filmmaker and curator Audrey Lam. In the vein of Audrey's film work, we have a fascinating lineup of fantasy and dreamlike short films that really push the medium of filmmaking in exciting new directions. Let's head inside to Westgarth's iconic Cinema 1 to chat with Audrey and learn more about her career. Hello everyone and welcome to Short Circuit, a program that broadcasts short films by Victorian filmmakers. Each week we're joined by a special guest from the film industry to chat about our lineup of short films and share insights from their accomplished career. Due to my very strict parole arrangements, I remain your host, Patrick Scott. Today we're delighted to be inside the heritage-listed Palace Westgarth, a cinema that has stood tall for over 100 years and counting. We're actually inside Cinema 1 today, which, for any music heads out there, is the exact filming location for INXS's music video, Listen Like Thieves. But we're not talking music today, we're talking films. And to help us in that endeavour is the highly distinguished filmmaker and curator, Audrey Lam, whose films have screened at both here at MIF and abroad at Rotterdam and BFI London, to name just a few. She was also nominated for the Blackmagic Design Australian Innovation Award for her feature film, Us and the Night, in 2024. Audrey Lam, thank you so much for joining us today. Just for those who don't know about your work, could you introduce us in terms of how you first got started in filmmaking and how did you know it was a career you wanted to pursue?
So I started in filmmaking, I guess, by going to film school after high school. And I didn't necessarily enjoy film school so much. So after film school, I went on to do other things. I moved overseas for a little while. And then it was when I went back to study and did a photography course that I became interested in filmmaking again.
Well, yeah, I'm keen to speak to you later on about how you developed your voice into filmmaking and how it's evolved over time. First, I want to introduce our first short film. Our first short film today is called Pastel, a 2023 mixed media short film directed by Hugo Vadasz. The film is set inside the mind of a young woman who has spent the night partying a little too hard. Her consciousness takes an exciting turn when she decides to call it a night, but things start to catch up with her. Take a look.
Welcome all. Tonight we have a very, very special show for you. We bring you a tale about a young earthling being introduced to time for the first time. Please hold tight and enjoy.
That was Pastel Hell by Hugo Vadasz, produced by Rachel Morrow and starring Madeline McGee Carr. It's a short film that uses traditional artistic techniques such as stop motion, live action and VFX to create the surreal imagery you just saw. It premiered locally at the St Kilda Film Festival in 2023 and internationally at the Hong Kong International Film Festival, where it won the Best Underground Film. Audrey, I'm curious to get your insights here. So, as we mentioned, Pastel Hell uses a number of traditional animation techniques like stop motion and puppetry. What do you think those like handmade qualities to a film can offer filmmakers that digital methods can't offer quite the same?
Yeah, I suppose what I did draw back from my filmmaking studies was that when I studied film, we shot on film on Bolexes and Aries and so forth. So I think I kept that with me. Shooting on film is just so much part of the process that in how I think about the project, how I film it as I'm filming. But there is, I guess there's some sort of connection I make materially, like how something comes together that in film, sound is recorded separately to the image. It's more pronounced, I think, when you're doing it on film, for me, anyway. But it was nice to see Pastel Hell because it is that sense that I think it maybe was made in film school, where you have all these things, all these resources and materials available to you, and I think it's so exhilarating to be able to try all these different things, to try stop motion, to try special effects, and have work with actors and all these different elements that you can play around with, and it's liberating, I think, as well as very stressful, I think, being a film student.
So with this short film, Pastel Hell, it doesn't quite have a strict narrative plot. It prefers the emotional state of the character. I've researched previously that you've said that you prefer to explore how your film develops through intuition, and is it correct that I'm saying you don't necessarily prepare a script? Is that right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a script, and maybe that's something that, in photography, you don't have to think so much about a script. You kind of just trying to conceive of what your film is.
So what appeals to you about having that free-flowing structure? And I'm also curious, what does pre-production look like for you when you're preparing a film project?
I do think a lot about what I want the film to be and how different elements might come together. I suppose the places that I film in are important to me, so I spend a bit of time there. I have a good sense of whether I want the camera to move or not move, so maybe that's a part of my pre-production, and which direction or how it moves, and I finding the people that I want to be in the film. I suppose that's a big part of it. Noticing, thinking about the sound and in the space, and how I might do it differently or draw on certain elements.
Yeah. So with Pastel Hell, there's clearly different departments really flourish in that short film. We see many different creatives come together. But you were mentioning earlier, you prefer to work on a bit of a smaller environment. You don't collaborate too widely. You just keep a small crew. Is that right? Yeah,
I think partly mine is the nice thing about film school is that you have all these other people around you that you can work with. But when you're trying to make something on a very low budget, it's really hard to get other people involved. And I definitely am really influenced by other filmmakers and artists that I know, and I would say that in a way there's not necessarily collaborators, but I don't feel alone in my filmmaking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, it's really fascinating hearing your insights. We're taking a break here on Short Circuit. After this, we have another short film in store called The Night Sky that we'll be chatting with Audrey about. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Short Circuit. It's a pleasure to have your company on this week's episode. I'm here chatting with Audrey Lam, and I'm very keen to get her thoughts on our next short film. It's called The Night Sky, a 2025 short film directed by Kaley, Shortus. It follows Ebony, who dreams of another life as a valiant knight Equites. While returning home from battle, Equites stumbles across a fallen star and embarks on a journey to return them to the night sky. Take a look.
I wish on a star, on a single star, every night that passes. I hope to dream of knights and nobles and a shining sword that I wield. And one day I will awake, transformed to that lord. No more pigtails or kitten calls. I wish on that single star. But tonight, I watched it fall. It's all right. I won't hurt you. Are you lost? I see. Too. Although I do not wish on my return. The night is my wandering kingdom, my blanket of obscurities, I suppose. You fell, didn't you? You fell from the sky. That's why you're here. Forgive me. I cannot comprehend such pain. You are fortunate. I have seen thousands of men at the mercy of their pain. But that is what men do. Create pain without mercy. I know of that.
That was The Night Sky, written and directed by Kaley, Shortus and starring Trinity Emery Rowe and Cameron Smith. It screened at the Melbourne Liftoff Film Festival and St Kilda Film Festival in the Under the Radar category. Audrey, I'm really keen to get your insights here because we had the opportunity to have a chat over email with the director, Kaley, who gave us some insights on the behind-the-scenes making of The Night Sky. One of the things that she mentioned, or they mentioned to us, is that there was like really heavy family involvement in the production of this film. So I think, for example, Kaley's partner plays the character of the star, and that the mask of the star was also constructed by her sister. And then I think also her brother took the photograph that became the poster of the film. So there's a lot of little bits of trivia related to family. You've worked previously, I think, with your own family on your short film, A River Twice. Can you share with us, is there any adjustments you have to make in working with your family on a film, or how does it change your directing style?
When I made A River Twice, I sort of... there was a boat that a friend had a boat, and from there I thought it would be nice to film my dad sort of near this boat somehow. It was a nice experience working with my dad. He's not in film at all, and I think he was quite obedient to how I asked him to be in the film, which was just basically walking down a street or sitting somewhere.
So yeah, in our correspondence with Kaley, she also described a level of frustration at some of the themes they were exploring in the short film being possibly misunderstood when it premiered at festivals, which I thought was really interesting. I'm curious, is it difficult for you to let go of a film, and are you worried at all that it might be misunderstood once it's released?
I haven't been yet. I feel a bit like once it's made, you don't have any control over it.
So you're happy for there to be multiple interpretations? You don't feel like if it's misunderstood in any way, you don't feel protective at all? Or?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think it's hard to. I try not to think about who sees it too much. Yeah. I always find it a little bit too close if I find out what someone thinks of it. But I'm just trying to think as someone who really likes watching films. I feel quite free to draw something from it, watching the film that the filmmaker didn't necessarily intend, for better or worse. So I suppose I hope that I can go into my own filmmaking with that same idea. I do understand that the sense that of people missing certain aspects of a film. I guess it is nice to read about what the filmmaker was interested in, and I do really enjoy film criticism and reading different points of views about a film.
No, I think in this case, the filmmaker was trying to subvert the traditional masculine iconography of a valiant knight, and have a female play that character, and it was meant to represent gender fluidity to an extent. Yeah. But when you're making a film, do you consider how the audience might receive it at all? Do you think about the audience when you're preparing a film?
Yeah, I don't know if I think about the audience. So I don't think I've had to think about who my audience is, in a sense. I guess if I think about it as watching other people's films, I've never, how do I say it? I don't necessarily think that filmmaker was making that film for me. That excitement of just discovering all sorts of work, films, books, art, which I think whoever made it might never have had, you know, someone like me in mind, which is a bit of a...
And Kaley also described to us that after making this film, it's a film for them that they learnt the most on during a production. There was like so many challenges that they faced that it was like a real learning curve for them. When you revisit your early work, for example, do you see touchstones of your voice or your style that's developed over time, or do you see like traits in your filmmaking that's been like discarded or matured perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know though, because I try not to. I don't really look back on my films, but I think I must always draw something that one film leads to the next and so forth. I think it's definitely things sort of stay with you and you come back to it in a way.
Yeah, so each project kind of evolves to the next and you kind of take lessons with you each time.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Short Circuit is off to a break. If you have an unrestrainable urge to make yourself a cup of tea, now would be the time. Herbal tea for me, I'm partial to peppermint. More Short Circuit after this. Welcome back to Short Circuit. If you're just joining us, you'd be thrilled to learn we're chatting with filmmaker Audrey Lam. Audrey has very kindly shared her own short film to broadcast today. It's called Underground, a 2007 photo cutout film in which a young woman awakes in a train station and finds herself swept into the scrum of its commuters, all hurrying to catch their impending trains. Let's take a look. That was Underground, a short film by Audrey Lam featuring Moira Rice and sound by Andrew Foley. We're very lucky to have Audrey with us now to learn more about how the film was made. So Audrey, I'm curious, obviously the first thing people would notice when they watch this is that it's a photographic cutout film. You've mentioned earlier that you came from a photography background, but even like the cutout style is very unique to a film. What drew you to that style in particular?
When I made it, I didn't actually have a reference point. I just used to go to that train station all the time. I thought it would be fun to take photographs of it, and then from there, it just came about. But after I made it, I realised that there's a whole history of collage and photo cutout sort of films, which was really exciting to discover. That film of doing the cutouts was a sort of a practical aspect. I just needed to have this person in the. It started off practically, I suppose, that I wanted this person in the station, but it just seemed too hard to coordinate those two things, a person and the train station. And then I was also really, now that I think about it, because it's been so long, at the time I had a lot of friends who worked in, they were architecture students, and a lot of they would documentation of sites were done through photographs, where they would build like a whole streetscape or something like that with these photographs, and they just sort of conjoined. So I thought, what if that's how you watched a film and let it unfold in that way. And also there were different artists that I really liked at the time who would make these collages. Gordon Matta Clark is someone that springs to mind, who had an architecture studies background, a New York artist from the 60s, 70s.
And what's interesting to me when I watch the short film is it feels like the train station could be anywhere. It could be like a liminal space, but it feels immediately familiar. Is it important to you at all to not make the space like immediately recognisable, like to maintain some ambiguity in terms of the location?
Yeah, I like that you say that, because now that I think about it, it does. There is something a bit generic about that station that I was really attracted to. And then with the last film I made, Us in the Night, I like that library because to me it just seemed like in a way, university libraries are very familiar. They're organised in a certain way. So I guess that brings back to the question you asked earlier about whether I go back to earlier films that I made. And so I guess it's always there that you come back to these elements that you're really drawn to.
So the train station in the short film, that's a train station
It's the Brisbane Central station.
Right,
so
right,
I'm
right.
from Brisbane,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
used to take the train all the time to get to university.
So what about the train station conveys to you like an abyss type environment that we see in the
it's
short
true.
film?
I don't know that I can think of specific things. It was so long ago, but I was as I said, I remember it was for this assignment, and at the time I was really interested in Guy Debord, and there's this idea of a derive, which you wander through a city, but you sort of you're sort of resisting. It's a political gesture to be in the city and figure out and sort of be anarchic is not the word, but they used to like cut up the map of Paris and then tape it up back together so that the streets no longer, it was all just a mess in a way. And then they would walk through the city with this new map that they had, and I just found that a really powerful idea. So that was one of the starting points for the film. Another, as I said, was Gordon Matter Clark and his collages and sculptures.
So as the short film goes on, it kind of takes on a bit of a dystopian edge, as you mentioned, where there's title cards that say like submit, subscribe, subservience, things like that. So I'm curious, like, how does like the format of a photo collage help convey those ideas of like conformity and resistance for you?
I guess I was interested in wordplay, and actually I think sometimes I think something is so obvious that I didn't put it in, and there are times when I wish I have done that, and that whole thing was, now that I think about it, Subvert or whatever, it was supposed to be like Subway, and I never put it in Subway because I was like, oh, that's so obvious, but actually I should have probably dropped that in.
Right,
I think there is something about, when you're at the train station and that morning, rush, and you see everyone in off to the office. It was a really strong
because you've got is it Moira Rice who plays the character of the agitator, I think it comes up during the short film, but then all the other figures in the short film are like faceless men and women. And am I correct in saying they have actual ticket stubs for faces? Things like that?
Because I think I was catching the train all the time, and I had all these ticket stubs.
They were your own,
and
right.
I think maybe that's how I sort of came up with the idea. And also I was working at a university library at the time, and had free reign on the photocopier, so I got a bit carried away with those little intertitles.
We're off to a short break. Don't go anywhere. We're chatting more with Audrey Lam about her programming and curating work, as well as her more recent filmmaking. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the program. We're doubly lucky today, not only to be chatting with Audrey Lam, but we're also situated inside Palace Westgarth, a towering edifice to the movie lovers of a bygone era. The cinema we're currently in used to house up to 1,500 seats, but has since been split up to 5 separate cinemas. So we're here chatting with Audrey Lam. So I wanted to broaden out the conversation a little bit now. So you moved to Melbourne, was it 2016, is that correct?
2015
2015.
or so, yeah.
And
something like
around pretty shortly after you got involved in places like the Artist Film Workshop, how did you get involved in that group, and what does your current role with them involve?
So I think I joined AFW, Artist Film Workshop, not long after I moved here. I was going to a lot of the screenings. They would screen, and still do, screen 16mm prints from the NFSA, National Film and Sound Archive, from their NTLC collection, which is the non-theatrical loan collection. There's a huge number of experimental films in that collection, Australian filmmakers as well as international, and I really enjoyed seeing those films. I'm from Brisbane, and in Brisbane, Other Film, which was run by Joel Stern, Sally Golding and Danny Savella, they would screen films from that collection then as well. So it was nice coming to Melbourne and seeing those films, and I suppose that's how I came to join the group. And then I was working on 16mm. I am working on 16mm film, and it was nice to have this lab to work in, and yeah, we try and organise regular screenings at Brunswick Green, and then we have workshops for members and sometimes the public as well.
And you've also done programming and curating work for Melbourne Cinematheque, is that correct?
A little bit. A friend, Keegan O'Connor, and I curated we brought the experimental filmmakers Robert Beavers and Uta Rant to Australia and screened their work alongside Gregory Markopoulos's films.
So in those programs, when you bring those filmmakers and different films together and have them kind of seen side by side and be in conversation with one another, how do you think it changes the conversation about those filmmakers' work and how the audience appreciates that work?
Good question. I suppose one part of it was I wanted the audience to discover these filmmakers. They were really underseen filmmakers in Australia, and the films that we, for that program, chose were 16mm film prints, and a crucial aspect of these filmmakers' work is that they shoot on film and they edit on film and project on film, and that was really important to us to screen it in that way. The filmmakers' interest in the everyday, a kind of diary filmmaking, but then also the mythic with the everyday, and we wanted to see how that would come together in a program.
So you've filmed on 16mm. A lot of the filmmakers you've mentioned were like very strict at the time for their filmmaking work to be seen on film and not to be digitised in any way. Do you have that same relationship with your own movies, or are you a little bit more lax about it?
Yeah, I definitely don't have that relationship, because most of my films I have shot on film, but Underground I edited sort of in camera and on the Steenbeck, on the flatbed editing machine, but a lot of my other films I shot digitally. Shot on film and then edited digitally, and it projects digitally. It's a different. I do think it's a really different way of working, having edited on film. but practically it's sort of not possible for me, and I enjoy the editing. The editing process is really important to me, and I enjoy doing it digitally.
And so, perhaps either from the filmmakers you've mentioned, from their point of view, or from perspectives that you've researched otherwise, are there certain qualities in a film that gets diminished once digital technology is introduced? Like, why do you think it was so important to them that people had to watch film as film?
Well, film is a photochemical material, so a lot of their work was about something about how that they were responding to the environment through this the quality of light, and it's sort of what photochemistry did. I guess the most in a way straightforward or simple example is Arthur Corrin's 3-color separation technique, which they were very renowned for, but they drew from the history of early cinema, and also then when Technicolor sort of came along, what they did was they would film, let's say this popcorn and they would film it 3 times, once with a red filter, once with a blue filter, once with a green filter. That's the properties of light, red, green and blue. And they filmed it on black and white film with these filters, and then when they printed it, they would expose these 3 sequences onto the same strip of colour film, and then what you have is colour back, because you've put the colour back into this.
So just to wrap up the interview, and we really appreciate your time today, I'm trying to end on a bit of a positive note. What advice would you give to young filmmakers out there who are just entering into the industry? What's good feedback or advice you could give them that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
I would say don't be too hard on yourself, and that it's okay to sort of discover things for yourself, to figure out how you might want to do things, what your interests are, and that you sort of feel free to discover those yourself, instead of feeling like you need to follow a particular path.
Unfortunately, we're out of time on today's episode of Short Circuit. I'm sure I speak on behalf of the audience as well as myself when I'd like to give a huge thank you to our guest Audrey Lam for chatting with us today. We would also like to thank and share our gratitude to the filmmakers that provided us with their short films today, and of course the team at Palace Westgarth for facilitating us. We'll be back next week, whether you like it or not, with more great short films. See you next week.